I'll talk about OpenPublic and where it's come from and why we're excited about working with OpenPublic and taking that to clients, and hopefully they'll see the same benefits that we're seeing, which is something that's really easy to pick up and run with, as far as all of that pre-development work that a developer using open source has to go through is to find the best practice as far as what are the best modules or add-ons, which ones are the ones that are secure, which ones are the ones that have got a community, active community behind them. You see that quite a lot, that modules get popular and then something else comes along and completely makes it redundant. Nobody really maintains those modules. So you really need to have a great awareness of what's new, what's best practice, which ones are the ones that are superseded, and if there are any new initiatives, that the modules are aligned with them. So particularly this happened with Node and Entity in Drupal, between Drupal 6 and 7, that people were saying, well, we're all going Entity, we're all going Node, what's going on? Drupal Commerce went to Entity and they did a great build, but obviously the documentation wasn't enough to make the whole of the rest of the community say Entity is the way to go because X, Y, and Z. Nobody could really see the real benefits of going to entity-based. It's still there, and it just means that everything is a node or everything is an entity in the system now. So that's settled down now, and people have realised that there's no real need to go change things because they work great. Contents are nodes, that's fine. Users are nodes, that's fine. Products can be entities, but the main content side of things in Drupal are node-based. So Drupal at the moment, so Drupal 7, if we were to deploy to a government client, there is a whole raft of modules that we would need to install. We'd have to talk to the client, align some of the modules that they may have with the ones we're going to put in. If we think there's a newer module that they should be using, then we'd suggest that to them. So, but there is this element of we've still got to customise the feature set of this version of Drupal for our client. Happens to be that our clients are government clients, and therefore there's extra levels of there's an extra level of requirements as far as accessibility and security, usability. All those things need to sort of be checked off as far as accessibility, usability, and some of the security. So we would, as developers, we would look at putting into place configurations with a combination of modules to put that layer that the Drupal needs to be either very secure or 100% accessible. So other than the base requirements of a government Drupal build, or even just a normal Drupal build for that matter, there is something you still have to extend the core of Drupal, and that is obviously something that's requires a bit of research and requires you to keep up to date, and you have to be fairly active in the community to sort of really know what's going on as far as the changes to the core and what is happening further out with Drupal 8. We're not going to bother too much about Drupal 8 until it actually appears closer, due next year, so we'll start looking at Drupal 8. A lot of the things that we're seeing in modules are the things that move into the core of Drupal. So if we go back and go to Drupal 6, we saw that things actually were so valuable and so used that people decided to put them into the core of Drupal. So image and fields and a few other big things have gone into the core of Drupal. What we're seeing with Drupal 8, and we won't spend too much time on Drupal 8, but some of the really good techniques for laying out blocks and for doing layout, different layouts, different configurations. So the blocks and layouts are changing Drupal 8, which is really just sort of helping Drupal 8 get into a more responsive, it gives it a core to build from as far as we need to be responsive in design, that these blocks and layouts are going to be flexible enough for us to be able to sort of stick them in columns and do things. That's already happening over in Drupal 7, and it's partially why we're excited about the OpenPublic platform, is that we have a couple of big modules that are sort of really defining now that Drupal can actually be very flexible. It can be used to actually deliver great experiences across devices. So those two modules we looked at, which were the context module, and we'll go to this one, which was the Delta module. So those two modules, just installing Drupal, don't do a whole lot. They need to be combined with a theme, which is being designed to actually talk to these two modules. And the theme we're talking about here is Amiga. There are a few other themes around that are responsive design themes. but they're media query based, and they're tied into Drupal at just that level, the CSS level, whereas Amiga and Delta and Context, which are three modules that you'll be hearing a lot of, really give you the ability to make Drupal do what you want as far as how it looks, how it moves, how it adapts to things. So that's a really big, critical step for Drupal. It now offers me a responsive and what I would call adaptive. It gives it a responsive and adaptive tool set, which lets you define how it changes and looks and how it renders in different environments. That's from a development side of things. That's a huge leap as far as us having to configure all those things together. There were modules that allowed you to change the shape and to basically do some design inside Drupal. That was called the Skinner module. There's another module called Display Suite, which kind of exposed Drupal a little bit more to being visually designed as opposed to just rendered into a kind of themed block or something. So there was a lot more power in there. So now this is here, that's checked off as far as we can move forward with this platform, and we know that for the next 10 years at least, we're going to be able to deliver to all the devices that are in the market. Unless we have microscopic things and projected onto the moon or something. But we're fairly confident now that this is a great combination. It checks off all the requirements that we see going forward as far as the device requirements, screen sizes, orientations. Draw a line under that. Okay, so the next big component inside of Drupal is you've got it looking good, you've got the modules in place, but from the core, so the bit that's lacking in the core of Drupal really is that configuration that's really tailored for your environment, your employees, the way they work. So with the core of Drupal 7, you really want to be defining that. There are modules about there, workflow modules, different kind of things that help you shape the way that content moves through the system and ends up being published on the website. So that's normally a roles-based thing, and it's fairly straightforward. You're an editor, you're an author. So setting that up, you have to go and set up that in Drupal anyway. You have to set some of the roles up in the permissions. Sorry. X-rated man. So there is this whole idea of taking Drupal's ready to go, it's out of the box. It's partially true. It is ready to go, it's out of the box. I can have a website up and running in 10 minutes. That's very, very true about Drupal and WordPress and the other open source content management systems. But what it really doesn't do is factor in your organisation or an organisation's kind of methodologies as far as publishing. So OpenPublic, to a degree, has addressed some of that, and particularly around this concept of people getting to Drupal and it being a bit overwhelming. There's too many options, there's too many things they can do. They might be afraid they're going to break things. So to simplify that, part of OpenPublic really just winds everything back to the things that they're meant to see and need to see. So if it's someone who approved content, also really seeing is that list of content to approve. If I need to see some other stuff around that, maybe the author who wrote that content, they can see that, but it's really not up front. It's not a list of users and who's in the system like the admin interface of Drupal. It's really, here's the things you need to approve today. Go to them, I won't approve them, and the list will get shorter. So that style of managing content within Drupal has really sort of come a long way. So there are mechanisms inside of OpenPublic, so we'll call this OpenPublic version of Drupal now. There are some things inside of this actual build of OpenPublic which kind of take away the complexities of content management. It says, for example, one of the things on the home page is a breaking news container, and the editors normally say, well, where's the news? What content type is it? How do I change this content, or how do I add this content? And most often, it is a piece of content that's in the system. It might have some kind of flag on it that says, this is the breaking news content. And that works really well. Until something happens where you say, well, actually, we need 10 people doing this because there's lots of breaking news. How can we make it so that it's just a really easy process for people to come along to the site and drop in breaking news? So what OpenPublic has is it has this concept of no queues, and that really basically means that this is a container that anything can go into, and from a content authoring perspective, I just have to check the box that says, look, this is breaking news also. Please appear in the front of the box. And so no queues allows us to do this. It basically says, it takes the node and it says, well, stick it in the node queue. There might be 10 items in the node queue. You might want to change the order of those. And that node queue gives you this functionality. So that's just a small example of something that's been added to OpenPublic, which alleviates that complexity around an author saying, where's the content, what do I need to do here? There are some more initiatives in Drupal, one in particularly which is an in-context editing layer over Drupal. So instead of actually going to the admin screen at this point saying, I'm going to put some breaking news in there, you click on a layer that's the editor's layer, and in context, I can have some breaking news directly in there. And that's something that I think we'll see in OpenPublic in the next few versions, is that they know that that's a really big win for people who are afraid and cautious about the back end of the content management system, is that it's going to go back to what happened 10 years ago, which was to abstract all of that complexity. Adobe had a product called Contribute, which was the simple thing you put onto your site, and it just said, edit this page, and when you pressed edit, everything turned into a box, and you changed the thing and pressed it at the bottom, and it was a saver page. And it was a popular product because it really did take that FTP code edit, took all that complexity out of it. It just made it so that someone could come along and make a change and press save. And that's some of the initiatives inside of OpenPublic that are helping content authors understand the process a lot better, because if they know what a queue is, as far as I'm going to put content into this queue, and eventually it's going to make its way to and be shown. So those terms, I guess, those publishing or workflow terms are sneaking into Drupal now and then becoming more familiar. So things like node queues, things like users and roles have all been overhauled as far as the thinking behind what those people need to actually see, not to overwhelm them or to sort of make their job any more complex. It's a really simple thing: make some content, publish some content. So this is now geared towards that. So outside of OpenPublic, there's another product called Workbench, which people are starting to talk about and implement, and that really is a similar layer over Drupal that says, look, forget about all that other stuff in the back end. We don't need to see that. We just need to see what the content coming through the system is, and we need to see who's working on it, what state it's at, how many items we have published, how many published items are about to hit at midnight tonight, etc. So it's a visibility of, so Workbench is kind of the visibility of the workflow and a reporting style interface to say, this is what's happened with your content. It's been clicked 100 times today. You might have some analytics built into that that says if you post another one in the next, that might lead your actual content output schedule, so to speak. So Workbench is another initiative coming into Drupal. So there was the other one which we talked about, which was the I think it's called Spark. I'm pretty sure it's called Spark, and that gives you this edit context layer over a very simplified content management layer over the actual website. Workbench and sort of in OpenPublic, they have basically set it and configured it to be easy to use out of the box, as opposed to having to know what to configure and know what to present with the user on the dashboard and things like that. So that's all configured. So I'll just talk about, I'll clean this up a bit. I'll just talk quickly about why this combination of context delta and Amiga modules that are important. So we have the context module, we have the delta module, and we have the theme. There's other themes around which are going to be able to do this. Like all themes are going to be able to do this, but at the moment, Amiga is the one that's the flagship. So context being, I give it a context. So I said the context for this one is if this is the front page of the site. So I'll give you let me write this. So this is the delta. This is the theme. So what these do individually are powerful, but combined together is where they really come into their own. So for example, here's our front page of our website. I'm just going to show you a little example now of how these themes, these three elements, there's a module, and theme, can help design and understand actually the different contexts that a user will be presented with, not even a user, but even a device. So the different contexts a homepage of a website would maybe have to undergo. So the context at the moment, and how we do it in Drupal, is to say that the context for this is the home. We're going to use a delta of this Amiga theme. This Amiga theme, at its static state, its unchanged state, might have a particular layout. So let's just say this is a pretty standard right column footer layout. So that's the default state of this combination of components. What's happening with the theme is there's obviously a 9-column grid happening, and with this particular delta, it's saying that this one here takes up all 9 columns, this one here might take up 4, and this one might take up 5, and then this one here is 9 columns. So we're actually starting to do some of the responsive setup by using a 9-column grid, because if we go from 9 to 12 columns, then we just do the maths and everything can expand out with the same ratios. So it's kind of like doing fixed width 960 design, or you're using percentage growth scaling, things like that, which makes everything a little bit hard to control when you don't have the limitations of viewports. So you say, well, if I keep stretching this forever, then obviously the design's going to move out of whack, there's going to be bigger spaces and things. So this 9-column grid really sets the foundation for responsive design inside of Drupal. And the Amiga theme with its regions really is the foundation of you getting the shape of the website. So for example, the homepage grid doesn't have any of this layout here, which is a sort of default template, and everybody will be used to the node or node.php or template.php in Drupal, which is the main page that controls everything. Every bit of content goes onto this page. It's the main site page. WordPress has a similar one. So yeah, they all pretty much have these templates, and as we have different sections of the site move around, we actually make different versions of this node.php. So we might have content type product. So we start to basically develop that way. We make different templates with different shapes. So that sort of did change a little bit. There are some other modules around there that give you the flexibility to do this inside of Drupal, and this is called panels. So you might have heard of panels saying, well, I want a 3-column on the home page, and panels does that well, but panels isn't really geared towards responsive design. It doesn't know what to do with the columns in the panel. If I've got a narrow layout, I basically just have to move to 1 column. It's not really a panel anymore, it's just a normal page. So panels didn't really have a clear path forward for responsive design, which is why these came into place. So we're back to our scenario of this being the home page. We have a default template which really doesn't look like the home page. Do we want to make this default template with no columns? We just have an area in the middle for our home page. This is a basic home page actually. There's a lot more home pages. I'm going the other way around, but you'll get the idea. So here's our default. With our context, we say if the context equals home. So in Drupal and a lot of other things, we have a path we can go from. The context can be anything. If the user is logged in, if the user is an administrator, if the person's been here 300 times, you can add that context. And the next thing is a reaction. So the reaction for the home page might be that we actually tell the delta to hide all of this stuff and actually just use one block at the top or one region at the top. And that's what we'll do. We'll say, if home page, the reaction is that get rid of all these other ones and just use this one. So now that's our home page. And that just gets saved as the context of the home page. Another quick example, a context is if the user is logged in, the reaction would be to put a block up here that says welcome Martin and things like that. So you're not doing this anymore at a other systems have different ways of doing it, but mainly it was at the page level in another CMS where you would give it a variable to say, well, the user's logged in the URL, so therefore change, CSS-wise or JavaScript-wise, change the layout for them. So there was never a real kind of easy way to do this. It was very ad hoc. You'd have to sort of change templates for different users and have different combinations of templates for different users. But the thing is, you have a template, a physical file that you need to manage. So what's different here, we're actually just dealing with these contexts in the database. There's context 1, there's context 2. The delta really is just a copy of the theme's capabilities, and then using the delta and context together lets you manipulate them based on all sorts of different things. In the responsive design world, we have this main delta, this Amiga template is already responsive. It already knows what to do as far as if it gets the viewport sizes, it knows what to do with these things. So these things are moved down, this thing might stretch across, etc., etc. So they're all basically already predefined in the current Amiga theme. So it's versatile enough to cover pretty much every scenario you can think of, as far as if you wanted to go to 12-column grid, 9-column grid, you can customise your own regions and configurations in the actual GUI of the Delta. Sorry, of the Amiga theme. There's a GUI environment that you. The next version here will be drag and drop, so you'll be able to basically just say, well, actually, just drag it up there and press save, as opposed to actually having to what the normal ways at the moment is to drag a block into a thing and then do your configuration and then press the save button. The new way will be you just drag it, it'll stick. So this combination is really powerful. What it's letting us do is it's basically letting us put all of the different shapes into Drupal at the beginning. So we basically say, well, we know what the templates are going to look like. It's going to be one like this, one like that. So therefore, we make our deltas from the theme we've already got, which is the responsive Amiga theme, and then we just use context to tweak those things as we go. And that's something that's